Imagine yourself in Rome, nearly 2,000 years ago. The streets are crowded, the smell of fresh bread and spices fills the air, and the murmur of the masses grows as everyone heads toward the imposing Colosseum. Senators, plebeians, and even foreigners, each one eager to witness a grand spectacle. But was watching the games truly a privilege? Or was there something far darker behind this entertainment? What happened inside the Colosseum went far beyond mere amusement. It was a tool of control, a stage for extreme brutality, and for many, a death sentence disguised as a show. Who truly had the right to a good seat? Who was forced to watch from the worst areas, and who wasn't allowed in at all? Today, we're going to reveal the dark truth that few dare to tell about the Colosseum Games, and how this privilege hides a brutal reality. Stay tuned until the end to understand how this form of entertainment shaped Roman society and left a legacy that still echoes today. But before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're subscribed to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos filled with curiosities about ancient Rome. Now, let's embark together on this historical journey. Have you ever wondered what it felt like for someone about to enter the greatest amphitheater of the ancient world, surrounded by trumpets and an anxious crowd? Get ready, because next we'll immerse ourselves in that atmosphere of pure anticipation. The buzz before the games. At daybreak, the streets near the Colosseum were already teeming with people discussing what they were about to see. From nobles wearing fine togas to humble merchants who left their stalls just so they wouldn't miss the spectacle, everyone flowed in an unbroken stream. The smell of freshly baked bread mixed with the aroma of exotic spices brought by merchants from various parts of the Roman Empire. At several spots, street performers danced to the sound of flutes and cymbals, energizing those still half asleep. Children ran among adults, chattering about lions from Africa or rumors of rare rhinoceroses that might appear in the arena. The anticipation was not just for the gladiators, but also for the wild animals, promising an exhibition of strength and bravery. Meanwhile, Tacitus and Juvenal discussed the political influence of these spectacles. Tacitus, always observant, noted how the people were carried away by the euphoria of the games, while Juvenal, true to his satirical nature, teased the audience by saying that Rome cared more about bread and circuses than serious political matters. Both historians knew that these entertainments served an important social function, keeping the people entertained while reinforcing the emperor's prestige. Pliny the Younger paused to write on his wax tablet, "The buzz is deafening, carrying both hope and fear at the same time." Or, his keen eyes captured the nervous expressions on the faces of some slaves responsible for maintaining the arena. He wondered how many gladiators would return alive at the end of the day. Now that the atmosphere is set and the whole city is abuzz, it's time to discover how each person found their place in the majestic Colosseum. Let's explore who occupied the best seats and how the social hierarchy was made evident at these events. The arrival at the Colosseum, social distinction in every stand. The Colosseum, with its grand architecture, was designed to accommodate tens of thousands of people. The 80 entry gates were not merely decorative. Each one led to specific sectors, preventing confusion. Senators, for instance, walked proudly through the gate designated for high-ranking individuals, while plebeians tried to mix in the more popular access points where jostling was inevitable. In the seats closest to the arena, known as the podium, personalities like Tacitus and even Martial, when invited by an influential patron, would sit. The podium, lined with marble, offered the best view of all the combats. It was common to see senators there, dressed in white linen togas, sometimes displaying jewelry and rings bearing symbols of ancient families. Above the podium was the Menianum Primum, reserved for the equestrian class. These citizens, known as the cavalry, held a certain prestige due to their wealth, but had not yet reached the level of the senators. Suetonius, in his observations, mentioned that from there one could clearly hear the clash of weapons. Meanwhile, the common people occupied the intermediate and upper levels, forming a noisy mass that vibrated with every blow struck. Women, with the exception of the Vestals, generally sat in the farthest seats, and Pliny noted this with some curiosity, recording in his letters how the limited female presence made the atmosphere more diverse. Thus, from the top of the stands, they could see the grandeur of the Colosseum and feel the tension rising from the rows closer to the action. With everyone in their proper place, looking upon that vast expanse of stone and sand, the big question arises. What was the experience of sitting, watching the arena, and feeling the energy of the Roman people? Let's find out in the next topic how the Colosseum's architecture influenced every second of the spectacle. The view of the arena, architecture and visual impact. From any point of view, one could see an elliptical arena covered in sand, sparkling under the Roman sun. If a person were on the upper levels, the spectacle resembled a giant living board, where men and beasts moved in choreographed battle sequences. Lower down, the feeling was as if you were almost inside the battlefield, feeling the vibrations of footsteps and the sound of clashing weapons. The sloping stands were meticulously designed so that no one's view was obstructed. This also improved the acoustics. Cries of pain or victory echoed clearly throughout the amphitheatre. Martial, in his epigrams, exalted how the structure made every voice reach the heart of the spectator. Tacitus wrote that even before the fights began, the Colosseum left an overwhelming impression. It seems the gods defied nature to raise these colossal stones. Every corridor and staircase, besides being organized, allowed the air to circulate, easing the heat and dispersing odors, especially when the arena became soiled with blood. It was not uncommon for the emperor, seated in a special box, to be seen waving to the crowd. This visual proximity generated both reverence and a sense of participation. For many, seeing Titus there in his purple attire was like witnessing the personification of divine power on earth. The audience now waited in expectant silence. And then the resounding blast of trumpets announced someone very special, Emperor Titus. Want to know how the atmosphere transformed at that moment? Let's move on to the next topic. The arrival of Titius and Imperial respect. The sound of trumpets spread throughout the stands, serving as a signal for everyone to rise and turn their eyes to the triumphant entrance of the emperor. Titus arrived surrounded by guards, counselors, and dignitaries, forming a procession that immediately commanded respect. He, in his purple toga, descended a few steps to the main box, waving to the people. Those nearby swore they saw a sparkle in his eyes, demonstrating satisfaction and pride. After all, the games were also a way to consolidate his legacy and display his generosity toward Rome. Suetonius, an attentive observer, recorded how the crowd reacted with thunderous cheers, raising their arms in salute. Some shouted his name, others praised his kindness for organizing spectacles for everyone, and some simply remained silent, impressed by the presence of such a majestic figure. With the emperor now seated, everyone waited for him to signal the start of the games. It was at that moment that the entire Colosseum seemed to hold its breath for a few moments, anticipating the unfolding scenes that would be etched into Rome's history forever. Titus sat, and the crowd could hardly contain their anxiety. It was at that moment that the lower gates opened and the true soul of the spectacle emerged, the gladiators. Let's learn about the entry ritual and all the details behind this ceremony. The entry of the gladiators, courage and war ritual. Slowly, the underground passages of the Colosseum began to open. The sound of metallic chains used to hoist iron gates was accompanied by the beating of drums. And then, gladiators emerged, in rows, each carrying their characteristic weapon. The retiarius with his net and trident, the mumio with his heavy shield, the secutor with his smooth helmet, among others. Upon reaching the center of the arena, everyone turned to Emperor Titus and saluted him. Some pounded their weapons against their chests, others raised their fists to the sky. But what truly moved the audience was the famous cry, "Ave, Caesar! Those who are about to die salute you." The tension was almost palpable. At that very moment, Juvenal, with his satirical flair, used to say that the Roman people loved danger as long as it wasn't themselves facing it. Yet deep down, he couldn't help but admire the courage of the gladiators who, in the face of an uncertain fate, held their heads high. The trumpets sounded again, signaling the start of the combats that were about to begin. The arena was set, the gladiators were ready, and the crowd, hungry for blood and glory, eagerly awaited the first clash of arms. Have you ever wondered how that moment shaped the destiny of an entire empire? Hit that like button now to support more content like this and share your thoughts in the comments. And then the moment arrived. The fights began. Want to understand what went through the mind and heart of each combatant while the crowd roared? Stay tuned to find out. The combat, the deadly dance in the arena. It took only the final signal for the gladiators to move with agility. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. The mumio advanced with his shield, testing his opponent's defense. The retiarius, moving in circular motions, tried to catch his adversary with his net. It was a true deadly dance, where tactical skill was as important as brute strength. Tacitus, in one of his writings, described how the crowd vibrated with every blow. The shouts of encouragement mingled with cries of despair, creating a terrifying yet fascinating symphony. And it was no wonder. The adrenaline united the plebeian and the senator alike, making everyone part of the same spectacle. A well-placed strike, a surprising dodge, and suddenly a gladiator fell. Silence took over. The previously boisterous crowd now watched intently, waiting for the final decision. Many looked to Titus, who sometimes gauged the popular reaction with a thumbs up or down. The life or death of the combatant depended on a simple gesture. When the emperor spared a gladiator who showed bravery, the crowd erupted in applause. Conversely, when execution was decreed, a morbid atmosphere ensued. Yet it did not diminish the people's fascination with the next spectacle. This was how Rome functioned, always balanced between cultural grandeur and the brutality of its customs. Between one combat and another, the games did not stop. There was room for diversions beyond the gladiatorial duels. Want to see how Roman creativity and cruelty manifested during the intervals? Let's find out now. The intervals, from the hunt to public executions. Right after some fights, the audience got a break from the human bloodshed to witness the ferocity of wild animals. Lions, tigers, and even elephants were released into the arena, facing trained hunters or less experienced gladiators. The idea was to provide a contrast that kept the interest alive. Often, small comedic shows emerged, such as fights featuring dwarfs dressed in miniature armor, or even female combat presentations. Something relatively rare, but which piqued everyone's curiosity. Martial, in his writings, notes that some were amused, while others were scandalized by the sight of women wielding swords. The darkest aspect of the intervals came with public executions. Prisoners of war, criminals, and even slaves could be forced to reenact Greek or Roman myths, the outcome of which was always fatal. Pliny the Younger described in one of his letters the feeling of bitterness and fascination when witnessing such scenes as they tested the limits of human compassion. However, these moments, as macabre as they were were part of the Roman spectacle culture. They were a continuation of a tradition that mixed religion, politics, and entertainment. And despite the shock value, they kept the Colosseum packed and the empire united in its appetite for maximum entertainment. As dusk fell, we reached the climax of the event. What happened after the last fights ended? How was the Colosseum prepared? For the next day, follow the next topic to find out. The closing, cleaning up, and the glory of the winners. When the final fight ended, the arena was usually left with marks of blood, animal carcasses, and remnants of set pieces. Then, a specialized team of slaves would enter with buckets of water and shovels to clean the sand, removing any evidence of the terror that had taken place. Meanwhile, the surviving gladiators gathered in front of Titus's box for the awarding ceremony. Some received laurel wreaths, a traditional symbol of victory in Rome. Others were honored with bags of coins, which could mean the chance to start a new life. In rare cases, the greatest achievement of all, freedom. Suetonius described this moment as a mix of jubilation and relief. The crowd cheered for the survivors and mourned those who would not return. For many, seeing the face of a victorious gladiator was like witnessing the embodiment of triumph over death itself. Thus, the day of spectacles ended with a bittersweet feeling. The glory of the winners contrasted with the harsh reality of a place that had witnessed pain and death. This paradox made the Colosseum a stage both grand and fearsome. Night fell, but the experience didn't end when the crowds left. Through the gates. Want to understand how the city experienced the post-game period and what it meant for everyday life? Read on. The exit from the Colosseum. Chats and reflections in the Tavernas. The crowd began to disperse through the 80 gates, forming a gigantic flow of people. Despite the sheer number of individuals, the architecture allowed for a relatively quick evacuation. Within minutes, an immense multitude spread throughout the streets of Rome. Soon, nearby taverns welcomed enthusiastic groups. Some discussed the performance of the gladiators, others complained about the emperor's decisions, and still others commented on the exotic animals. It was a major moment of collective banter, almost like a post-game ritual. Tacitus enjoyed circulating in these taverns, gathering public opinions and noting potential political trends. He observed how the overall mood could change rapidly. If the games were considered good, the emperor's popularity increased. If they did not meet expectations, rumors of discontent would arise. Pliny, on his part, recorded in his letters the feeling of a light soul that many experienced upon leaving the amphitheater. It seemed that witnessing the bloodshed made people value their own lives even more, and it was in this clash between the harshness of the spectacle and the fleeting joy of leaving that the soul of the city was built. To finish this journey, we must understand the legacy that this day of games left for the future, both in the hearts of the spectators and in the history of Rome. Our next topic closes this story with important reflections. The legacy of a day of games in the Colosseum. Every day of games was etched into the collective memory. Stories of courageous gladiators were passed from mouth to mouth, taking on almost mythical contours. Many became true urban legends, inspiring young people to dream of glory in the arena or even to fear the tragic fate it could impose. For Emperor Titus, it was an opportunity to get closer to the people and reinforce the idea of benevolence. He organized games and entertainments that satisfied the masses' desire for diversion, while also reminding everyone who held the power. The spectacles were, without a doubt, one of the most efficient forms of imperial propaganda. Martial, Juvenal, Tacitus, Pliny, Suetonius, Titus, Livius, all these authors left written records that still resonate today. They showed the later world a vibrant Rome, at once cruel and fascinating, where the Colosseum served as the pulsating heart of the city. What is most impressive is that the ruins of the Colosseum still seem to whisper these accounts. Walking through its empty corridors, we can almost hear the echo of thousands of voices, feel a chill down our spine in the presence of exotic beasts, and remember how fleeting life in the arena was. That is the legacy, the understanding that between glory and tragedy lies the essence of the human condition. So we have reached the end of this long and passionate journey through the corridors of time. Now you know in detail what it was like to spend an entire day in the Colosseum. The class-segregated stands, the triumphant arrival of Emperor Titus, the dramatic entry of the gladiators, and the moments of glory and horror that unfolded until nightfall. Beyond the blood and the spectacle, these games reveal the soul of a society that sought, in the same arena, both entertainment and an affirmation of power. A society that still fascinates us today and teaches us about human contradictions. If you enjoyed this journey back in time and want more fascinating stories like this one, subscribe to our channel now, hit that like button, and share the video with your friends. This helps us continue bringing you content full of curiosities and reflections about ancient Rome and the Empire. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.